Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the All Dolphins podcast on YouTube under that name or wherever you can get your podcasts on the Fans First Sports Network under Miami Dolphins Insider. He is Omar. I am Poupart, talking all things Dolphins. Unfortunately, there's not a ton going on right now because it is the dead period between the end of the offseason program and the start of minicamp. But there's always stuff to talk about when it comes to the Dolphins, isn't there?
Absolutely. No, right now you're looking at your roster, probably in maybe 5 weeks time, you're going to be reconvening for camp, but a lot of guys should be working out, training, getting themselves in the best condition of their career, just because this is a pivotal point of their career. I watched Mike Tomlin, an interview, which made me convinced that the Steelers should be forced to do Hard Knocks. If you want to resurrect that docuseries, Steelers would be one of those good teams. I know they were forcing teams to do it. I forgot what the criteria was, though.
Hasn't appeared in 10 years. Didn't make the playoffs either of the last 2 years, and does not have a first-year head coach. If you meet those three criteria, you can. There are 4 teams right now that can be forced. Steelers cannot be forced.
Yes, but next year, if they don't make the playoffs, then they could potentially be forced.
Correct, because I don't recall ever seeing him on Hard Knocks, and they would be good. Mike Tomlin, I mean, among the coaches I respect around the NFL, I mean, he's right up there for me.
Yep, you could have had him if you didn't fall in love with Cam Cameron after the second interview that you forced. Totally different subject. But he was basically saying, at this point, you need to be getting better. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. And when you pair that with the fact that you're born to die and the thought process of a lot of us are aging, we're basically have an expiration date. We're dying.
Speak for yourself, Omar. Go ahead.
Oh, you're okay. Well, and players have a short shelf life. When you factor in the fact that the average time span of a career is relatively 4 years, man, that's mind blowing. So Christian Wilkins has already exceeded his NFL career and has exceeded the average NFL career, and his career really hasn't even started yet. It's just quite remarkable what these players and these athletes achieve. And a lot of that is based on what they put into themselves in the offseason.
Yeah, and you combine that with natural ability, and this is where the Dolphins have a lot of high-profile, high-end players who, if they follow the Mike Tomlin format, get better and improve from where they were last year. This is where it gets really interesting for the Dolphins, and it starts with Tua. If Tua takes another step from what he did last year, which was a major step up from 2021,
yeah,
we're talking all sorts of possibilities.
You know what's interesting, and this is probably a veer to the left of where we're supposed to go. But talking to Big O, who we both do hits with on his podcast, about the best Dolphins team since in terms of this roster. When I always think about the best Dolphins teams I've covered, and you go back to the Jimmy Johnson days, so I
go back to the Don Shula days.
Oh, wow, you go back to the Don Shula days, so you're probably disqualified, but I'm curious what your answer is on this. I say this to people, and it really gets their brains churning. The best Dolphins team, talent-wise, that I ever covered was the 2011 Dolphins team. And I can give you the roster. Now, we're just talking top shelf here. We're just talking starting talent. I could give you that roster, and you'd look at it and say, man, the only weakness is really quarterback. That was the year that Matt Moore took over for an injured Chad Henne and led the team to a 6-10 record. They won 6 of the final 9 games down the stretch. After starting the year tragically bad at 0-7. Brandon Marshall, Jake Long, Richie Incognito, Mike Pouncey, Vernon Carey, Mark Colombo, who obviously was the weak link of that offensive line.
Who would not talk to the media all year.
Yeah. Anthony Fasano, who, say what you want about Anthony Fasano. He had a
Very solid. Very solid.
respectable career. Brian Hartline, probably a better coach than he was a receiver, but let's not well, I hate when you
see, there you go. Let's not pretend.
Let's not pretend that he did not have back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with
very
the
good receiver.
Reggie Bush, remember that name?
Hmm?
Dynamic player. Charles Clay, Pro Bowler.
Great multi-purpose player on offense.
Yes. And so I would say offensively, you got one weak link at tackle. Mediocre tight ends when you consider they never really had a number 2 outside of Charles Clay. But Charles Clay and Anthony Fasano, no slouches there. And then Matt Moore. Say what you will about Matt Moore, but I could rock with Matt Moore. I would have rather had Matt Moore as a starter than Chad Henne. Then you go to the defensive team. Yeah. Kendall Langford, Jared Odrick, Paul Soliai, Randy Starks, Koamisi, Cameron Wake, Jason Taylor. That was your pass rushing defensive line. Then you got Kevin Burnett, Carlos Dansby, both very respected. I would argue to you that you probably haven't had a better 2 linebacker tandem since Zach Thomas and Zach Thomas.
Zach
Thomas
and Robert. No, I don't disagree. That's not been a great position for the team, if we're going to be honest, though.
Cornerbacks, Vontae Davis, Sean Smith, Nolan Carroll. Safeties, Rashad Jones, Jeremiah. Oh, I forgot Will Allen. And then safeties, Rashad Jones and Jeremiah Bell. That was a stacked team.
Stacked? That's a strong word. That's a strong word. That's a pretty well-balanced team with good B plus players all over the place. I don't know exactly how many A players you have there. And
A player, hold on, wait a minute. You want to say A players? A player, let's do it. Brandon Marshall, A player, right?
Sure.
Jake Long in his prime, A player, right?
Without a doubt.
Richie Incognito, A player, right? Probably a D human, but A player. Come on, he was a Pro Bowler.
Wow, A minus as a guard.
Okay. Then we've got I said Reggie Bush. You give me A? Yeah.
Starting running back. He crossed 1,000 yards. A minus.
Okay, so we got 4. I'm not even going to push you for Reggie Bush. Okay, Randy Starks. I'll fight you over Randy Starks.
Oh no, I like Randy Starks probably more than
a lot of
people here. Yeah, I love Randy Starks.
Jason Taylor was in his prime. It was not in his prime.
No, that was his final year. So
Cameron Wake was definitely in his prime. So we get an A player for that one.
Yes.
Carlos Dansby. Fight you over Carlos Dansby. That was one hell of a linebacker.
B plus.
Woo! B plus for Carlos Dansby. All
yes.
right, I'll let that slide. I'm not going to fight you over Vontae Davis and Sean Smith.
They weren't there yet. Vontae actually became really, really good after the Dolphins traded him, even though he was always a great tackler.
Hey, man, he needed his grandma. So it is what it is.
Cold.
Rashad Jones, A player. I'll fight you over Rashad.
Not in his second year, he wasn't an A player.
That was his second year?
Yes. It was a 5th-round pick in 2010.
All right. Will you give me Jeremiah Bell?
Not as an A player. No, sorry.
Okay. So I got 6 A players. Give me your
It was a good solid roster. I don't know that it was a stacked roster, and it to me didn't have anywhere near the high-end talent that you have this year. I mean, if you look at this year, the number of guys who would say, let's say, are top 5 at their position or approaching top 5 at their position. I mean, Tyreek Hill, Teron Armstead.
Yep.
Xavier Howard, Jalen Ramsey.
Okay.
That's 4 without thinking. As a run-stuffing defensive tackle, Christian Wilkins might be top 5, except if we're talking overall defensive tackle, the pass rushing is lacking. So
I'm not going to fight you. Okay. I'll let it ride. You're not, can't, I will fight you over Bradley Chubb now.
No, we're certainly not top 5. I mean, right now he'd probably be, at his best, he's an A- player, but he wasn't that last year after he got here from Denver. But you have a lot of guys who also, are very good.
Yeah, I mean, that roster was a lot of guys who were very good. So, you're still lacking one A plus player in my count.
Yeah, but I think we have a lot more who are on the cusp. Jalen Waddle's on the cusp. If Tua takes another step forward, he becomes an A player. Jalen Phillips has that capability. Javon Holland has that capability. The question, I think Robert Hunt has the potential to be an A- player as a guard. This is where the upward track that Mike Tomlin keeps talking about comes into play. The big difference heading into this season, and I know I'm supposed to be the big Tua hater, but I will say coming into this season, the big difference between 2023 and 2011 is Tua is 7 steps higher than Chad Henne. So
yes, I say Matt Moore because Chad Henne was not very good.
But they made him the starter at the start of the regular season, which was completely ridiculous to me because Matt Moore performed very, very well. And in fact, I was of the opinion that he should have been given a shot to start in 2012 as opposed to going with Ryan Tannehill after they'd made him the 8th overall pick. But that's a different story. To me, see, I go way further back than you do. It reminds me a little bit of 1995 when the Dolphins brought in a whole bunch of big name players, including Eric Green, who was a tight end who had played for the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
And it really didn't work. The Dolphins didn't make the playoffs, but they were only 9-7. They played at Buffalo in the wild card round. They got spanked 37-22 and got themselves into cap hell. And then Jimmy Johnson came in replacing Don Shula. And to get the cap in order, they basically let walk Brian Cox, Troy Vincent, Marco Coleman, and Irving Fryer, who were 4 key players. And then so there was a little bit of a rebuild once Jimmy Johnson took over. But that 95 looked like a go for it year for the Dolphins. And this is what it reminds me of a little bit. Except that this team is younger than that team was in 95. Mm-hmm. And the flip side to that is the other factor that's involved is, as I recall, the AFC wasn't nearly as stacked in 95 as it is this year because it's a complete joke. And the thing that's kind of frustrating if you're a Dolphins fan is you have a team that's really, really good, except that, let's say, 9 of the top 10 quarterbacks are in the AFC. Pretty much everybody except Jalen Hurts. All your good quarterbacks are in the AFC. If the
you gonna disrespect Dak like that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely gonna yes. I'm gonna run down.
Not in your top 10.
Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson if he gets back to Houston days, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes. Tua's better than Dak.
Herbert.
I mentioned Herbert. So how many am I? I think I'm up to 9.
Yeah, you're up to 9.
So
that got to be in your top 10.
Hurts is better than Dak right now. And Matthew Stafford's better than Dak right now. So
I'm processing.
You're shaking your head. You're shaking your head like
I'm processing. I mean, what is Stafford? Stafford has a ring, so I can't really. Oh, okay, all right. We could, yeah, I guess so. Damn, 9, and that didn't even include Tua.
No, did I make? And then Tua is better than Dak. I said, yeah. Tua is better than Dak. Yes, in my humble opinion, yes.
I gotta calculate that.
Yeah, I think Dak's got his moments, but he can be inconsistent. He's also a guy who got a lot of mileage behind a great running game when Zeke was at his peak, and behind what was once one of the best offensive lines in the NFL.
Absolutely, no question about it. That I haven't thought about it. I haven't really thought about it. I don't know if I'm living off the legacy of Dak, but hey. You know, it is what it is. If Dak isn't in your top 10, that's all fair and good. Herbert isn't in mine. No.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure Stafford will be in my top 10 either. Good quarterback, but you had one good season.
Well, you had a lot of good season in Detroit on a bad team. And this is where, of course, somebody might say, well, there was a lot of stat padding because they were always behind. Sure, but you watch the guy throw the ball, and if you're not impressed, I don't know what to tell you. Obviously, he's got an elbow situation he had from last year that's everybody's got to look at and see if he's right. But obviously my rankings are based on everybody being healthy, you know, and this is where, and the way I base it, this is basically if you're a team who has to, like, for 1 year, no salary cap, you can implement whatever system with whatever talent around. Which quarterback do you want? Because it's not
Okay,
like
I
Chris
see.
Bird.
I actually like your barometer. You have no money. What can this quarterback make happen? And I get you. Tua can get you a winning record. So I hear what you're saying. He's worked with crap before.
No, correct. And this is where also, and this is independent of the
I
fact.
cannot do that.
Well, this is where I'm going to go back and make the argument that Tua had a winning record his first couple of years as much as anything else because of the very good defense. Last year, you can certainly give him a lot more credit for the winning record than you could in 2020 and 2021. And so you could make that argument for Tua. You can make the argument for Dak. They had a winning record in Dallas for a couple of years because of the offensive line and the running game. But this does not factor in, and it's a separate conversation from saying who's the best quarterback for this offense. Because I have said that Tua is ideal for the offense, the way the Dolphins do things, which is based on quick passing, get rid of the ball quickly, timing, accuracy, short and intermediate range, get it over the top if you guys open. Great for that. But again, if you're ranking quarterbacks, it has to be independent of the system around. And again, this was an argument that was used for Tua in his first couple of years when the numbers weren't good. It was basically the offense sucks. The coaching staff doesn't believe in him. The wide receivers suck. He's got no offensive line. Well, and
no run game too. Don't forget that.
And no run game either. Well, last year, a lot of those issues were settled, which is where I took exception to you when I said he delivered the most big plays. Well, if it wasn't all him when the numbers weren't great the first 2 years, it wasn't all him last year when the numbers were great. Everything has to work in conjunction. That was, and of course, that I explained that position in my mailbag this weekend, and still getting some pushback on it, which is fine. Everybody can.
Hey, man, you fit into 2 columns in the Tua camp. You're either Tua lover or you're Tua hater. I'm still a Tua hater, so it's all good. Yeah, man, I fit into the. I'm a Tua I'm in Tua hater in the Tua camp. Because you gotta, to be a member of a card carrying member of Tuanon, which I don't want to be, you have to unemphatically defend him with vigor and fight no matter what. And that's not going to be the case for me.
No, and for me, it's just like you said, he delivered the most big plays of any quarterback in the NFL last year. And I said, well, that's all fine and dandy, but you have to mention that he had the fastest set of wide receivers in NFL history. And that makes me a Tua hater. I can't give Tua credit. No, I said he had a very, very good year. He's great for the offense. Doesn't change the fact that if he doesn't have Tyreek and Waddle last year, let's see if he's leading the NFL in big plays. So, anyway.
Hey, man, he delivered with Matt Collins a couple times.
I remember one time, and the other time was Ryan Fitzpatrick when he was getting his helmet yanked.
You are correct.
Okay. So going back to like the previous discussion of this Dolphin team being like the most talented, I think it's absolutely got the potential. And the whole is Tua has to stay healthy. I mean, really, no doubt. I mean, does Patrick Mahomes not have to stay healthy for the Chiefs? Does Joe Burrow not have to stay healthy for the Bengals? I mean, seriously, and here's the thing. Yes, I get it. Tua hasn't had a fully healthy season since 2016 or whatever it was. Last year was concussion. Before that, it was injuries that kept him out 2-3 games.
Ribs.
And then he came back and he finished the season. If that's the case, I think the Dolphins can survive playing 2 or 3 games without Tua. The concussions, that was a one-shot deal. Joe Burrow tore an ACL.
Have you seen Mike White?
Well, if the Dolphins completely fall, again, here's another interesting, I'm glad you brought that up. If the Dolphins completely fall apart, if Tua has to miss games, then we need to stop talking about how this is the best roster they've had in a long time, how this is one of the best rosters in the NFL. Because if you're that quarterback dependent, then your roster isn't necessarily.
I am, and I agree with you. I think you make a very valid point in your All Dolphins column and observation. You make a very valid point. Like everybody always says, this is a very good team. They should challenge for the AFC East if Tua is healthy. Tua is the cat. Yeah, everybody should everybody if their everybody needs their quarterback. The Rams needed Matt Stafford. Well, the San Francisco 49ers, they didn't need their quarterback, but I mean, that's the exception to the rule. I hear where you're coming from. I do think that they are potentially a much better team with Tua as a quarterback than they are with Mike White or Skylar Thompson. And that's not a knock on either of those quarterbacks, but I don't think they have a chance to produce a winning record if, let's say, Tua suffers a Ryan Tannehill injury in camp and is done for the year. You're going to be pulling out the Jay Cutler card and going after a Teddy Bridgewater or somebody of that sort, because I just don't see the backup here.
Then if that's the case, you have failed. And again, if that's the case, then your roster isn't nearly as good as we're making it out to be. And just like if Josh Allen goes down and it's Case Keenum playing quarterback for the Bills, are we talking about them as a contender? If Josh Burrow goes down, I don't even know if Brandon Allen's still their backup there. I mean, this applies, and I would make the argument that remove the quarterback from the equation. Okay, Philly's got a better roster. Frisco's got a better overall roster. How many teams would you say have clearly a better overall roster than the Dolphins outside of those two?
Philadelphia,
Chiefs,
Buffalo.
yeah, because Chiefs have a very good offensive line. I'll give you Chiefs. Okay, Chiefs, Philly, Chiefs, Philly, San Francisco so far. Anybody else?
Maybe the 49ers. Except for the
Frisco.
Yeah. Okay. That's about it. Yeah.
Okay, then why can't the Dolphins compete? You know, that's and here's the other point too that I did in the story I wrote on alldolphins.com on Friday. There are examples all over the place of teams losing their starting quarterback. 2017 Eagles, Carson Wentz was on a course to win the MVP. Week 13, and they brought in Nick Foles, who had one great season, whose career passer rating to that point, and I checked it up, was under 90. Okay, and they ran the table.
Career passer rating.
Sorry?
I said, that's a pretty good career passer rating. Chad Henne never got there.
Okay. Okay. And then here's another example. I mean, we talked about the 49ers last year. They weren't down to their second quarterback. They were down to their third quarterback. And it's
I got to throw that one out because that's such an aberration in terms of Purdy just was so dynamic that year and clutch. I don't think you could expect that. You hadn't seen that since Tom Brady. And I'm not saying that he can continue that. What?
Yeah.
He broke every Tom Brady record.
No. I think that Brock Purdy's quote unquote magic. He made some good throws. He made some good plays at times. There's also a lot that he had a completely stacked team with one of the best offensive lines in the league, one of the most dynamic two-way receivers in Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk's a hell of a player, one of the best tight ends in the league, George Kittle, and one of the best running backs in the league in Christian McCaffrey.
Absolutely.
That helps. Two other examples I pointed out in my story. Number one, in training camp in 1999, the Rams lost Trent Green as their starting quarterback with Dick Vermeil.
Yeah. Damn, you're going to Hall of Famer.
Well, and guess what? They brought Kurt Warner, who had, you know how many NFL regular season games he had played to that point? 0. They won the Super Bowl. And then the final one is my example, which Dolphin fans should all bow their head in shame if they start thinking that Tua goes down, the season's over. The 72 Dolphins lost Bob Greasy in the 5th game of the year. And they went on and ran the table. And sure, Bob Greasy came back at halftime of the AFC Championship game against Pittsburgh because the offense was kind of stagnant, but it wasn't like they were trailing with 7-7 nothing. It was 7-7 at the time. So they very well might have, had they continued with Earl Morrall, they could have won that game and won the Super Bowl anyway. So my whole point is, but yes, it's completely 100% obvious, cleared, no duh. The Dolphins are better with Tua at quarterback. I mean, no shit, Sherlock. Having said that,
done without him though.
Sorry?
I've said season's done without him.
Then there's a flaw in the roster, starting with the backup quarterback position.
I have this, and this is where the conversation began. I have this problem looking at this roster and saying, man, they're so talented. Just like we discussed, there's 6 blue chip players, which is a good amount. That's very impressive. And there's probably another 6 blue chip six B players. But the rest of the roster, I mean, you just drop off the C players, and a lot of it's D. A lot of it's D. Your offensive line You disagree?
Whoa, D player.
Do you have talent? Do you have talent at linebacker?
You have C+ players, maybe B-. David Long Jr. again, but the question
B-?
mark.
Who's a B-?
David Long Jr. is a B- linebacker, but he's got to stay healthy.
The Tennessee Titans certainly
yes,
didn't.
David Long Jr. is a good player. David Long Jr. is a good player, but he's got to stay healthy. He's a question mark there. Jerome Baker's not an impact player, but he's not a stiff.
Hold on. I don't like this whole David Long Jr. is a good player. Has David Long Jr. accomplished more than Jerome Baker has accomplished in his career?
Well, we talking about honors. Neither of them has been to a
pro. No. He hasn't accomplished half of what Jerome Baker's accomplished in his career.
Jerome Baker's been a solid player in the NFL. Has
David Long been a solid player in the NFL?
Yes. They both have been solid players in the NFL. They're not impact linebackers. I will grant you that, but they're solid players. I mean, if those are your worst starters on defense, you're doing okay. But this is where, again, they need guys like Jalen Phillips has to take a step up. Christian Wilkins has to become more of a factor.
Emmanuel Ogbah. Don't overlook.
Emmanuel Ogbah's got to come back from where he was 2 years ago. Bradley Chubb's got to be the Denver Broncos at his best. Bradley Chubb. Javon Holland's got to take the step that everybody expects him to take.
Who's his teammate in the secondary?
Whether it be Deshaun Elliott or Brandon Jones.
You act like that position don't matter.
No, it does matter. What I'm saying also, you can't have a star at every position. I'm just saying they have, like on defense, you have guys who potentially are like high-end players. You got Bradley Chubb, Christian Wilkins, Jalen Phillips, Xavier Howard, Jalen Ramsey, Xavier, and Javon Holland. That's 6 out of 11. That's pretty damn good.
Just gonna disrespect Jerome Baker and his 102 tackles, right? Okay, gotcha.
You want to call him a high-end player? You were just dissing. You want to call him a high-end player?
No. I'm just saying I like Jerome better than a lot of people. I mean, I'm sorry. One, he's been an extremely durable player for what, 6 years, 5 years?
5 years.
5 years, and he's averaged 102 tackles in his entire career. Now, he sent out this cryptic message on Twitter to the Dolphin fans, which Jerome's a master of cryptic messages, apologizing to the fans for letting them down last year. And I get it. You probably didn't have the best year that you wanted to have. You weren't the versatile, do everything linebacker. I don't think the scheme requires you to do that. Maybe you had some distractions off the field, which a lot of people never factor in with players. And I think that's a huge factor. Let a guy go through a divorce and trust me, his play is going to be bad. Let a guy just have a baby and have to deal with what's going on in his household with a newborn. And his season is going to be in the tube. But Jerome wasn't a massive disappointment. They finished fourth against.
Who said he was?
Dolphin fans can't wait for Jerome. They're mad that they had to restructure his contract and guarantee him money this year because they wanted to get rid of him and replace him with who?
But the issue again with Jerome is you look at his salary and he makes a decent chunk of change in 2023, and Dolphin fans. My issue with Jerome Baker is I think he's a very solid player. I can honestly tell you there were a lot of games last year where I didn't notice him. Forget the high tackle numbers. It's like I want to feel him, and it's like make me notice you. And there were a lot of times last year when he didn't do that.
Okay, that's fair. A lot of games. I'm not going to name the player, but there's a lot of games, a lot of high-end player. Everybody says absolutely needs to be re-signed. He went games where he wasn't noticeable.
I know. Let's just say I noticed him, Christian Wilkins, a lot more than I noticed Jerome Baker.
Okay, that's fair. It's got to work in concert. Everybody has to do their job. Jerome, I think, is a valuable piece. Of all the linebackers in the unit, I have the most confidence in Jerome based on what I've seen so far. When we're referring to inside linebackers, not necessarily outside linebackers.
No, but that's fine. But I go back to my point of there is more than enough talent that if everybody takes the step up, the Mike Tomlin step up, with the addition of Vic Fangio, whose history suggests quick and immediate improvement. The overall performance of the defense statistically in terms of yards allowed and points allowed, if those elements come together, there is no reason a Dolphin defense couldn't sniff the top 10. I mean, there's no reason. They were, what, 24th last year, whatever it was?
So what is our standard for this Dolphins defense and Dolphins offense? Obviously, we expect special teams to be like, that's what they were last year. I don't know if we're going to see any
They
improvement.
were horrible last year, if we're going to be honest about it.
But offensively, you expect the top 10 defense and the top 10 offense.
I don't see any reason why that's not an attainable goal. I mean, and the other issue also is, and this isn't talked about terribly often, is you want to look at a factor when the Dolphins lost, and we all know what's very often brought out. Defense didn't create takeaways when they lost. You know?
Didn't think about it.
That makes a difference, because if you look at a couple of the games, like early on, that first game against New England, they won 20-7. The offense didn't blow anybody away. Well, they got 3 turnovers, and including a fumble return for a touchdown. That kind of helps. And if also we're going to be honest about it, the offense was putrid in the playoff game against Buffalo, and they lost by 3 because the defense again produced 3 turnovers, including another fumble return for a touchdown.
So you think turnovers are going to be the magic trick? Yeah, I mean, they are. They usually are. It's
huge. And this is what happened when the Dolphins had their long winning streak in 2021. It wasn't because the offense all of a sudden started clicking. It was because the defense was shutting everybody down, producing turnovers and all that.
2016, they led the NFL in turnovers.
There you go.
They made their playoff run. So,
and how many times you remember them coming up with like the key play? It was like their defense wasn't great, but it kept coming up with the key play of the right.
Yes.
Alonso pick 6 against the Chargers, like in the last minute or so. And there were other examples like that. I mean, you know, the San Francisco game where they get a goal line stand and stop Kaepernick at the 2-yard line on the last play of the game. So another one of those where Kaepernick rolled through them the entire game, but they came up big at the end. There was clutch defense. I think this defense not only has the ability to be good in the clutch, but it's also got, again, the talent, if everybody performs to their capabilities, of being really good on most downs.
You know what would help a defense? A phenomenal run game. And that's why I still continue to bang the drum for Dalvin Cook. In my All Dolphins column that's being posted, I make the argument, a multi-year deal, in my opinion, a multi-year deal that averages about 5.3. I put it at 3 years. I'm going with $16 million. I think you put a 3-year, $16 million, $5 million signing bonus, $3 million in 2024 guaranteed for injury. I think you sign it and seal it. I seal the deal. And yes, the market out there for Dalvin Cook isn't very strong right now because most of the teams that are actually good have already spent their their money. They're capped out. Now that's never stopped the team from doing whatever they wanted to do, and it probably never will stop a team. But a lot of teams have already drafted young players like the Dolphins did in Devon Achane, who they probably want to invest in. I look at the Dalvin Cook addition as an instant way to improve your play calling. That's Mike McDaniel. You want to be a genius? Add Dalvin Cook. Instant way to improve your passing game, because exactly how do you put a single safety high over Waddle and Tyreek when you've got Dalvin Cook in the backfield? Are defenders going to defend you with 6? The Dalvin Cook with 6? That check down's going for 15 every time. So if you want to, and think about being able to finish out games with a back who's averaged 4.7 yards per carry. And this is no disrespect to Raheem Mostert or Jeff Wilson or Achane. This is about the whole collective in the NFL is add elite players. You are in position to add an elite player, being in his backyard, being the team that he wants to play for, being a team that has the offense that he knows, because his 1,500-yard rushing season came in Gary Kubiak's Minnesota offense. Who did Mike McDaniel? Who hired Mike McDaniel for his first job?
Gary Kubiak.
Who did Mike McDaniel work under when he was with the Denver Broncos as an intern? Mike McDaniel. Gary
Kubiak.
Gary Kubiak. If you see, every player doesn't want to, one, relocate his family. Well, he doesn't have to do it here. He doesn't want to have a struggle learning a new offense. He's already been in this offense in Minnesota where he had his best season. It makes too much sense. And I would hate to see the Dolphins not do this because they want to extend some of their players. They want to use that $12 million to extend some of their players. Doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't add up. Are you all in or are you not all in?
No, and you make a fair argument. My only point to that would be there's only so much money to throw around, or to go around. Number one. Number two, while without question, Dalvin Cook immediately becomes the best running back on the roster the second the Dolphins sign him. Is he that much of an upgrade over Raheem Mostert that you need to spend big money there?
I think big money. $6 million is not big money. You signed Chase Edmonds
with a team again, but with a team with a cap situation they're in, and again, to me, it comes down to how much money can you, or how little money can you sign him for, and how you structure the contract, because they're tight this year. Well, no, they have like 13 million of cap space. For next year, they're already, I think it's like 30 million over the cap. So
2 million over the cap.
Okay, obviously they're going to be.
Let me propose this to you.
Go ahead.
You pay somebody to take Cedric Wilson off your hands. He's already on your books for $7 million, $5 million of it guaranteed. Now, if Steve Ross is willing to write a fat check to have somebody take Cedric Wilson off his hands to create the opening for Dalvin Cook, does that make more sense to you, or are you just not throwing Steve Ross's money away?
Not my money. I mean, and here's the other thing too, is it certainly could be something that Steve Ross would be willing to do because he's 83 years old. He's been the Dolphins owner for more than 14, 15 years. Doesn't have a whole lot to show for it. He would love nothing more. He's been a major success in the real estate business. You know what it would mean to him to be like a success as an NFL owner with a Super Bowl. So I absolutely could see him do that and saying, no, throw caution to the wind. Like, I don't care whatever money costs me. I want to get it done. And this would go back to if we're going full circle in our discussion, this would go back to my 1995 vibes, where it's a completely go for it all move. And the bottom line is, even though I'm not convinced it's going to happen, because I'm not sure that, like Mike McDaniel, for example, sees Dalvin Cook as so much of an upgrade that he can't make it work with what he has. If you're going for it all, you certainly can justify making that extra move. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this discussion. He is Omar. I am Poupart. Thanks for listening until we do this again.